Hi everyone and welcome to another video from dispairrepair.com. In this video we'll show you how to find the alternator in your car. Knowing this is the first and necessary step if you want to do anything around the alternator. As you'll see, finding it is easy and doesn't take much time if you know what to do. So stay tuned. dispairrepair.com. Be sure to visit us at our website dispairrepair.com where you can find more useful car and driving tips. Before we start, we would like to recommend our video about the alternator. What is it and how it works? So if you have any dilemmas about the alternator, this video should help. Click on the card in the corner to watch it. One thing you can do that will make finding the alternator much easier is to take off the engine cover. Exceptions from this are engine bays where the alternator is mounted in an easy to access place, mainly for easier maintenance. But if the engine bay is packed, then taking off the engine cover is almost necessary. You don't have to do this if you can access the alternator from under the car, but even in this case you have to take off protective undercovers, so it's more or less the same job. So to make life easier, simply take off the engine cover. If you want to see how to do this, we've made a separate video on this topic. Click on the card in the corner to watch it. Following the serpentine belt and pulleys is the easiest and most effective way to find the alternator. Why? Well, the reason is that the alternator is exclusively driven by the engine with the serpentine belt. There is no other way. If there is, it's not as common as the serpentine belt for sure. So, find the belt and pulleys on your engine, which are surely visible on almost any engine, and you'll find the alternator. Also, the serpentine belt pulleys, and thus the alternator, have a predefined position, which leads us to the next way to find the alternator. Know that the alternator must be mounted in a certain way because how the engine is built. Since the crankshaft and the crankshaft pulley drive the alternator, it must be positioned this way in order to work. The alternator is always mounted alongside the engine in the direction of the engine cylinders and crankshaft. The longer side of the alternator goes in the direction of the longer side of the engine. Another way of looking at this is that the alternator is always mounted 90 degrees opposed to the pulleys and the serpentine belt. Also know that the alternator may be mounted on the left or right side of the engine, looking from the serpentine belt. Next, try to recognize the alternator itself. On some cars, this is pretty hard since some engines have lots of extra pulleys, like for the AC compressor, for a power steer pump, a tensioner and else. Also, the alternator may be tucked in, so to say. The easiest way to recognize the alternator is by its size and shape. It is one of the biggest appliances on the engine, which makes finding it much easier. Besides this, it's very recognizable by its cylindrical shape. Also, the body of the alternator has various openings for letting air inside for cooling. In older versions, one more good sign for recognizing was the fan located just behind the pulley. The alternator is held in place with usually 2 or 3 screws, depending on the type of alternator. So search for a bigger cylindrical appliance with a pulley on one side and wires on the other. Speaking about wires, if all of the previous tips fail, then this one will work for sure. The alternator is connected to the car's electric installation with wires and cables, namely one thicker wire and one or more thinner ones. So take a look inside the engine bay, look around the pulleys and serpentine belt and see what appliance is connected with a couple of thicker and thinner wires. Besides this, you'll also notice on the rear of the alternator connectors, screws or nuts holding the wires in place. But even if this doesn't work, then there's one more way, and that is to follow the cable from the battery terminal, namely the thinner cable. It will either lead to the alternator directly, or more often it will lead first to the starter and then to the alternator. This way, there is no way you can miss it. So, once again for the end. In order to find the alternator, Best first take off the engine cover to have a better view. Then search for the serpentine belt and pulleys. Follow the belt and you'll recognize the alternator by its shape and size. Look at the engine placement and this will additionally help. If you don't find it by then, search for the wiring and electric connections or follow the wires from the battery. One thing's for sure, you can't miss the alternator, it's only a matter of time and persistence until you find it. So that's it for this time, we hope the video helps. Please like and subscribe, it's a huge help for what we're doing. Thanks for watching and thanks for your time.